start building a little something, like a little song in there with no instruments,
going along with the list
in
editor button.
Logic Pro X. So let's go ahead and click on Logic Pro X. Mine's already open.
Going along
so I'm
with
going to go
Notepad,
up here
if
and
you
go
want
to
to quickly
File,
add notes.
New.
We'll have Apple Loops.
And I'm presented with
I'll
this
explain
screen.
in a bit.
Now, if you open it from scratch and it's your first time opening Logic Pro X, you're probably going to see this screen here. Now, if you notice, there's a bunch of templates here to start with for a little bit of a range of different sorts of projects you might want to work on, like an orchestral project, hip hop, electronic, blah blah, so on. Me personally, I don't like to start with any templates because templates are kind of like limiting. There's a lot of limitations with templates, and I find that most of the time when I start with a template, I end up having to delete most of what's there anyway just to get going on a project. So what I like to do is just start with an empty project, bare bones. Then I'm going to come down here to choose. So the next screen I'm presented with is a choice of different layers or tracks that I could start with. Now our tracks are going to be listed here, or in other words, our layers are going to be listed here. So if you're making a song in this area, you're going to have listed all the instruments that are in your song, like your drums, your guitars, your synthesizers, keyboards, and so on and so forth. Now me personally, most of my layers are going to be either software instruments or audio instruments. Software instruments are going to be anything from plugins, any kind of synthesizer that you'd plug into the computer, or virtual synthesizer, which is what I use, or even samplers, or if you want some kind of drum kit, that's a virtual drum kit, of course, anything along those lines. And then an audio track would be to record anything externally, like a guitar, if you have a guitar, if you have a microphone and you want to record vocals, and anything like that. If you want to record like a saxophone or literally anything that you have externally that you want to record into Logic, you would do it through an audio file. Now these tracks, the drummer tracks, guitar, and external MIDI, I never use external MIDI. Guitar bass is kind of like a templated track, which you could use a template track if you want, but I would recommend using the audio track because it's just bare bones, and you can go ahead and record anything, edit it the way you want, and so on and so forth. So these are the two most popular tracks you're probably going to end up using, is audio and software instrument. And for the time being, I'm going to go ahead with the software instrument, and I'm just going to hit create here. If you notice, there's stuff here that you don't really have to worry about, because in the preferences is where you would set up like your output device and stuff like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit create, and you see now we have a track here. We have all of this stuff. Now if you're just seeing this for the first time, it's very, very confusing. It's very overwhelming. There's way too much stuff going on, and but that's okay, because the more you do this, the more you open up Logic, and the more you attempt to create music and watch tutorials, you'll catch on to this in no time. This stuff will be like a second language to you. But before we go ahead and get any further into the tutorial, we have to go up to here and just make sure we're all on the same page. So we need to go to Logic Pro X, Preferences, and let's come down to where it says Advanced Tools. And I want you to click that, and then you may have to show Advanced Tools by clicking in that check mark here. And if it's the first time you're ever opening up Logic, the chances are you're not going to have any of these check marks checked in. So what I want you to do is go ahead and check those in. And what that's going to allow is it's going to allow Logic to be the most advanced version of itself as it can be. Now that doesn't mean you have to use these advanced tools. It's just going to mean that your Logic will look exactly as mine looks, and you can when you check all these check marks in, it allows you to create with no limitations. So when you get to that point, when you getting more comfortable with creating songs, if you have all these check marks checked in, Logic will have no limitations. You can pretty much do whatever you want in the interface. So go ahead, check those in, hit enable all, and get rid of it. So now your Logic interface should look very, very similar to mine if you have the most updated version in 2017. So the way I want to go with this tutorial from now on is I just want to kind of start creating stuff, and I also want to briefly explain what certain things are. I don't want to totally ramble on about every single function here because you will not remember it if I do that. There's just too much going on, and I think the most effective thing to do is just start creating something and explain what certain things are as I go. So without further ado, let's get started with creating just a little something. And let me just tell you, in 2017, writing music has never been easier, and you're about to see that. So first thing I like to do is I like to come up to here. This is our little meter. It's kind of like the gauges in a car. It just tells you everything about what the song's doing. So my tempo, I'm just going to go ahead and choose a 128 BPM tempo. Doesn't really mean anything. It just means how fast the song is going to go. Now, if you're unsure about a tempo, I would just start on the default tempo, which is 120 beats per minute, and see how fast it is. Go ahead and click on the metronome, which is over here, play it, and try to hum a little beat in your head and see if that tempo works for you. I'm just going to choose 128 because in electronic music, that's a pretty basic beat per minute there. If your meter does not look like this, just go ahead and hit this arrow and make sure it says beats in project or beats in project large. Okay, so now what we're going to do is come down here, and when I click this track here, which is my classic electric piano, this mixer here kind of correlates with this, and this is a mixer here, so this would be the volume fader of anything that goes on there. And you have our buses here. Buses I'll explain a little later, but for now we can just turn them off and ignore them. And then this is our instrument. So E piano is here. You can see classic E piano is up here. So if I go here, I click these arrows, I will get a nice new list of different instruments I can use, or I can navigate this library here. And if you don't see this library, it's probably because this little file cabinet looking thing isn't open. So go ahead and click that down and see all the different instruments that you could take. So let's go ahead and choose a piano. See how easy it is to choose a piano. So I just choose piano, and then I pick the Yamaha Grand. Look, you have access to all these different pianos you can use. Steinway's a very popular piano, and so is the Bosendorfer. So each of them makes some nice sounds. So let's electronically write a nice melody in here. But wait a second, before we do that, I want you to notice everything we just clicked in here changed. And that's because we picked a different instrument here. These instruments have preset effects built in. These are some audio effects here, and these are some different bus settings here. So anytime you take an instrument from this library, it's going to come with some preset effects. So let's just go back and turn those off, as we're not going to be changing this instrument again. So those will not change. So let's go ahead and start writing something. We're going to write our melodies in this area here. This is called the grid. We're going to write our melodies here. We're going to write our drums here. We're going to write our basses here. And we're pretty much going to write everything here. Our whole song is going to be here. And it's going to start here at 1. And it's going to play on to as long as we want it to play. Let me just show you something before we write a melody. If we go here to time, you can see how long your song is, no matter how long, no matter if your song is there or not. So right here, if you wrote a song that started at 1 and ended here, that would be a 30-second song. That would be a 1 minute 15-second song there. Let's go to 3 minutes and 10 seconds, which is an average length song. If you wanted an average length song, you would have to start here and then end here with your musical writing. So let's go ahead and write something. So the way I'm doing this, by the way, is I am spreading my fingers and closing them together on the trackpad. If you're using a mouse, you would use these sliders here to zoom in on the grid. So I'm going to come here and pick a tool that will allow me to start writing. So you can see my primary tool is my pointer tool, and then my secondary tool is my pencil tool. I'm going to make this my pencil tool. And now to get access to my secondary tool, I'm going to hold Command and click. Then I'm going to get this little green thing here, and this is called a region. It's kind of like a blank piece of paper, where the grid is like the cover of the book, and now this is just a paper here, piece of paper. And we have to write on that piece of paper, because if I press play, or in other words the space bar, you don't hear anything even though I wrote this green thing here. But that green thing doesn't make any sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up toward the bottom end of it, not the top end, because you see a different symbol appears. If we go toward the bottom end here, this is going to allow me to stretch it to 4 bars in length. This is 1 bar, 2 bar, 3 bar, and 4 bars in length. And then we get our nice piece of paper that if we double click, will bring up our piano roll. And now I can write some notes inside this region. So let's go ahead and write some notes. So the easiest way to write notes, in my opinion, is write notes in the C key. If you have no idea what any kind of music theory is and you just want to make melodies by ear, I would recommend staying in a key that's easy to write, that's easy to like kind of navigate, or in other words, use all the white keys, don't use any of the black keys yet. And the way I wrote this key here is I held Command and I clicked, because if you see, this piano roll has 2 new tools, not just these 2 tools, but there's 2 new tools to navigate this piano roll. And the secondary tool here is by default the pencil tool. So I wrote this note here, and I'm going to go ahead and stretch it out to 1 bar in length. And there we go. And keep in mind our metronome is on because we had it clicked on. Now if I play this without the metronome, you're not going to hear the metronome. So that's the metronome. And a nice quick tip before we write the next note, our mixer comes up when we click this mixer looking thing. So that was just kind of a side note. So let's go ahead and write the next note. I'm just going to put the same note all the way across by hitting Command and click and making sure that each of these notes are a bar in length. So these are my notes, and these are going to be my root key notes, and just kind of like a marker of where I am in the scale. Keep in mind we're only going to use the white keys here, and I'm going to go ahead and build some bass notes, or click in some bass notes. Watch this. Well, let's go ahead, bring these up an octave so it sounds a little better. And mind you, an octave would be C2. If this is C1 and I want to go up an octave, we're going to go to C2. And that's how to write some really uplifting piano notes. Now, let's go ahead and continue writing some notes here and make this sound really, really cool. Now, since I wrote that bass line and I use this root key here, I don't need that root key there anymore to guide me. I can move these up and down and wherever to make something really, really nice sounding. So let's go ahead, let's go to this note here, and I want to put this note 7 semitones above these bass notes here. So keep in mind these bass notes are these 3 notes here, all white keys, none of the black keys yet. We're not going to get into those notes yet. And then that is also a white key. So let's go ahead, go 7 semitones above this note, and we're going to start writing some chords. So you'll get a nice little intro to music theory here. So this is the bass key here, and then let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we're going to do the same thing here. This is on semitone 0, and then we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that we're going to repeat the same thing for all the notes. So now we have pretty much a perfect chord so far. And watch this, we need one more layer of notes. Now I'm going to show you a cool trick here in Logic Pro X. I'm going to take these, I'm going to hold Command and click R, and look at that. We got 4 notes nicely duplicated. I'm going to sit these right in the middle of each of these notes, and I'm just going to go ahead and move these keys off of the black key, because remember, we're sticking with the white keys here, and it'll be the easiest to manage these notes as long as they're on the white keys. We got a black key here again. And we get something as pretty as that. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that is a beautiful chord progression. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move each of these. I'm going to hold Shift, and as I hold Shift and click these, I can select them all. And I'm going to move these up an octave. Now remember what an octave meant? So this key is on C2. To go up an octave, I'm going to move it to C3. Oops, sorry about that. Pretty awesome. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Logic Pro X, the functions in Logic Pro X, to loop this melody out. So let's go ahead and zoom in here with that little slider. And keep in mind that when we go up to the bottom end of this region, all that allows us to do is stretch this. But look what Logic does, it's pretty cool. If we go to the top part of it and we get that little circle and we just click and drag, now our melody is 16 bars in length. Or in other words, if we look up here, it's 30 seconds now. Our song just went from 7 seconds to about 30 seconds, 35 seconds. That's a pretty melody there. So let's go ahead and write some drums. Now how are we going to do that in Logic? Let's figure it out. Well, one thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make another track, and this track is going to be for drums. So how do we do that? Well, one thing we can do is if we have a certain track selected, we can actually double click this space here, this gray space here, double click, and it'll give us all the new tracks we need. Now how does it know what track to put there though? Because remember earlier we were faced with audio tracks, drummer tracks, software instrument tracks. How does it know to just give us another software instrument track? Well, whatever kind of track was selected here the last track selected, if you double click here, it'll give you that same kind of track. So we have a software instrument track there. But what if we wanted a audio track? We would have to go up to track and then new audio track and click that. Or you could go to this plus sign here and click audio track, and do something like that. And watch. Now if I select a software instrument track and double click here, it's going to give me another software instrument track. Or if I go to this audio track, double click, it's going to give me an audio track. So let's go ahead with the software instrument track because I'm going to use some electronic drums. Now remember earlier, turn off the buses because we don't need them, and if you keep them on, they're going to slightly change your sound by adding a little bit of reverb, and we're not at reverb yet, so let's not talk about reverb. Let's just turn off the buses, and let's come into here, this library here, or if you don't want to navigate the library, you can navigate the thousands and thousands and thousands of loops, all these drum loops. Now I personally don't like using drum loops because I don't like using anything preset. I like to make everything from scratch. So what I'm going to do is choose drum kit here, or actually I'm going to use electronic drum kit. Now you know what, let's go to drum kit. These are going to sound more like acoustic drums, and these are going to sound more like electronic drums, hip hop, R&B, pop, any kind of drums that you would hear that are very electronically made. Now instead of explaining those, I think it would be the best idea actually to just go ahead and use them. So let's go ahead and pick the Boutique 808 kit, and these are all kits here. So what does that mean? I'll show you what that means. I'm going to hold command here and write that nice blank piece of paper that I can write my drum loops in, and I'm going to double click it to bring up my piano roll here. Or another thing you can do is click these scissors. So if you have this selected, this region here, this is called a region, this green piece of paper that I'm referring to, if you have this region here selected and you go up to these scissors, it's going to bring up the piano roll for the piano. Now if we want the Boutique 808 kit, we can click that and it will automatically go to the region for the drum kit. So let's go ahead and start writing some drums. Now what the hell are we looking at here? I see a list of all these drums and just another grid. It's actually not that overwhelming once you start doing it. So I'm going to hold command, and you can see my secondary tool is selected here, and I'm going to click in a kick, because what not a better instrument to start off with than a kick. So let's go ahead and shorten that. Doesn't matter how long this note is because this is processed by a drum synthesizer, so it doesn't matter if this note is this long or this long. So let's go ahead and leave it like that. And then let's put a nice snare here, so if I read this list, looks like the snare is on the third key up from the kick. So I'm just going to follow this out. Hold command and click for another kick here. Let's do another kick there to make a nice rhythm. For rhythms, I like to just hum them out in my head along to the melody, or you could go ahead and mute the melody, turn on your metronome, and hum a nice beat out this way. Now I'm just going to take this all, command R, and the R stands for repeat, or you can means duplicate, but what it basically does obviously is just duplicate everything you have written down. Let's differentiate this second half here a little bit by going like a da-dun-dun, something like that. What if we do this? Nope, I like this. I'm going to turn off this metronome because it's kind of messing me up now that I have some drums written here. I'm going to click this one, and I want this hit to be a little bit softer than this hit. So watch how I'm going to do that. I'm going to click it, And then over where it says velocity here, I'm just going to slide it on down a little bit. And you're going to see the color of the note changing. And it's also going to be a lighter sounding hit. So if I click this, and then I click this, see how this one's slightly softer? So then you get something like that. Mind you, this little looping tool I'm doing up here, this yellow bar, it's kind of crucial that I explain what that is, and I kind of skipped over it multiple times, and here I am using it over and over. This is the looper. This bar is just the looper. So anywhere that is, this marker here will stop there and it will start back over. So watch this. So it's always going to restart this marker back to where it started. Now if we make it really short, watch this. And you can make this literally any length you want, and you can start it from anywhere. So let's do it there, and let's press the space bar. That is how to use the looping bar. And you can turn it on and off by using this thing. Most of the time I have it on though, because it really makes navigation of your track super easy. So now I want to talk about the volume of everything. So what if I want my pianos to be quiet, my drums to be loud? Well, you can change the volume of your pianos with this slider here, and watch this. Watch this slider as I turn this one up and down. That's pretty crazy, isn't it? It's actually not that crazy, because that is just the fader of the pianos. If you hear somebody refer to it as a fader, that's just what it's called. You can call it the volume knob or the gain knob or anything you want, the mixer, and so on and so forth. There's a million different words I've heard people call it. But all it does is control how loud these pianos are. So watch this. If we want to do a little bit of mixing, let's start off our drums. Pretty awesome, I'd say so myself. Now let's do something cool. Now if you're getting into pretty much any genre, let's just say any genre, you've probably heard sounds that sound like they're in a really big space, and they're just really huge sounding sounds, and they have what's called reverb on them. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to add reverb to your sounds. But here's what I have to do. Because I can't add reverb to a kick, I'm going to have to take this kick, hold Command C to copy it. I'm going to get rid of that kick like that. So now my snare is here, like that. And I have to put my kick on a different layer because I'm going to go ahead and add reverb to the snare. But here's my dilemma now. How am I going to get this exact kick under here on a different layer? How am I going to do that? Well, Logic actually makes it super easy, because we can go up here to this duplication tool and duplicate the track. Just like that. Now the same track. Just I set this marker back to 1 and I hit Command C. This is going to be the kick that I just Command C'd, or I just copied. So watch, everything's here, it's just separated now in different layers. The snare's a little loud, so I'm going to turn it down. Very awesome. So let's go ahead back to that reverb thing. We're going to go ahead and add reverb to this snare layer here. But look at this, we got 3 layers. And I'm starting to forget some of the stuff that's going on here because there's so much stuff going on. Let's go ahead and organize this layer by double clicking where it says Boutique 808. We're going to call this snare, bro. Oh wait, that doesn't say bro. That says bro. Snare, bro. And then we need the kick, bro. And so now I have my Yamaha Grand on this layer, my snare on this layer, my kick on this layer, and we're never going to forget what's going on if we just keep organizing what's going on. Now, I'm the worst at organization, and that just makes my life miserable when I'm making music sometimes. So go ahead and organize your track. I promise you, it's just going to make everything easier. So let's go back to the snare and add some reverb. How do we do it? Where do we get it? What the hell even is it? So if I solo this out, right now our snare sounds like this. We need to add what's called an audio effect to it, or we can call it reverb, or we can call it an external plugin, or anything. But the place we do it is down here. So we see we have a compressor here, and we have an EQ here. I'm going to get rid of those so we can see the word. See that? Audio effects. So I'm going to click anywhere in that where it says audio effects, and it's going to bring up this list of plugins. Now please ignore these. These are some third-party plugins that don't come with Logic, but don't worry, I'm not using any third-party plugins today. I'm only using plugins that come with Logic. So if we come navigate this list down here that's towards the bottom, we can see all the plugins that come with Logic Pro X, even in audio. Oh wait, no, I thought Apple. Oh yeah, if we go up here to Apple, there's more plugins that come with Logic Pro X. But if we go to here to reverb, and we got 4 reverb plugins that come with Logic Pro X. I'm just going to take Platinum Verb because it's simple. I'm just going to add it on, and without even doing anything, watch this. We get that sound now. But if I turn it off, now it's really, really dry. Now it doesn't really sound that good right now because for some reason by default it gave me the dry knob all the way down. So I'm just going to put that dry knob all the way back up. Dry is literally the volume of your original sound relative to this reverb plugin. So if you don't know what that means, just put the dry knob to 100% and watch what happens without even touching anything. Now we have a nice reverb on that snare. Reverb gets really cool though. I'll show you something cool. We're going to go ahead and add leads to this. Now we have our piano, which could be the leads if you want them to, but we can make things cooler here and add a nice lead manually. So I'm going to go ahead and give us a new software instrument track. So to remind you of the ways we can do that, I can either select this track and double click here, and that'll give me a software instrument track. We can go to this plus sign here, and this will give me a software instrument track, or whatever kind of track I want. Create, or we can go to track and decide what kind of track you want to have up here. So let's go ahead and find a synth, a nice synthesizer sound, or in other words, a sound that's electronic-y, something really cool and 2017-y. Alright, so let's go ahead and navigate a different list here, a different list than this list. Now we could, if we wanted to, go to synthesizer and pick a nice lead from this list, which would probably be the easiest thing to do. I'm going to live on the edge a little and show you a different list that we can navigate, one a little more bare bones, not really set up like presets, which this is more preset based here. We're going to go ahead where it says ePiano on our new track here. We're going to click our new track and go to where it says ePiano. You can see there's 3 sections here that we can click. We can turn it off. We can click it on open by clicking the middle of it. This is what an ePiano looks like virtually. Or we can go ahead and click these arrows here, and it brings this list that kind of looks like the audio effect list, but it has nothing to do with the audio effect list because these aren't audio effects. These are audio instruments. And let's go ahead into these instruments and let's pick a synthesizer. So if you don't know what the ES2 is, it'll briefly explain what it is. Synthesizer number 2, and then we got synthesizer 1, and then polyphonic synth, and monophonic synth, ensemble synth, FM synth, drum kit designer. You have a sampler, which is one of the most, which is probably going to be one of your more important instruments that you'll get into if you're going into the hip hop genre or the electronic genre. So you should definitely get to know a sampler. But I'm going to use a synthesizer, and I'm not going to use any of these synthesizers because these are more old synthesizers that have been around for a long time, and although they sound pretty cool, I'm going to go to Alchemy, which is the newest synthesizer in the fleet of synthesizers that Logic comes with. So I'm going to go to Alchemy, and then you see here it says stereo. It might even say mono for you, but just click stereo because it sounds nicer than making sounds in mono. And then we're presented with just an overwhelming amount of what the hell is going on. Now, this is a library of sounds. It's a library of 3,164 different sounds, or in other words, presets. Now, that's an extensive library. That's a big library. So let's figure out how to navigate this. And if you're like a champion with synthesis, I just want to mention, click on the Advanced tab and have at it with creating your own sounds, which is definitely the most fun thing to do. But if you don't know how to make sounds, we can do it. We can find a perfect sound by just going through this library here. Now, it tries to help us out by simplifying these 3,000 presets. Let's go ahead and pick a lead. And then what kind of lead do we want? Do we want a soft lead, hard lead, analog, digital? Let's just choose all for that, because any of those will make me pretty happy. Let's go to electro, or like electronic, and let's notice how our list significantly decreased in size, and that's kind of what we're going for. And this is where we really could focus in on some certain sounds. I want something soft and clean. Let's go to clean. Nice. 40 presets to navigate. Let's just go through all 40 presets and see if I get any that I like. So I'm just going to pick the airy synth lead, and in Logic Pro X we close out the synthesizer once we pick it. We don't have to keep it open. Let's hold Command, click, and remember, let's stretch this out. Uh-oh. Look at this. This is a nice little dilemma that we run into. Our region, we're having trouble making it the right size here. Now if we zoom in, we can make it the right size, or if we go to snap here, smart, click the list down, snap regions to absolute value, bang, it will always glue right to those grids there. So there you go. Then let's go ahead and open up this piano roll and write in some leads. And when I'm writing melodies, let's make it super easy. Command click, Command click, Command click on all of the big lines here, and then we're going to get something like this for now. Get something like that, and let's go ahead and make a melody. let's just do a nice quirky little melody. Let's take it all, Command R, and let's see what it sounds like. Now, that's a nice melody and all, but we have to make it sound cooler with some audio effects. And that's really what makes music amazing, is electronically we can add anything we want to pretty much any sound and just make it sound all that much cooler. Now, this sound to me sounds like it's going to need a little bit of chorus, definitely some reverb, and definitely some delay. So let's go ahead without further ado and add some reverb, delay, and chorus, not necessarily in that order. First thing I'm going to do is add some reverb by clicking into this audio effects, coming down to reverb, and remember that good old platinum verb. Let's go ahead and do platinum verb, and this time our dry knob is all the way up to 100%, so I don't even got to do anything. The wet knob is at 30%, and that's what's going to control how much reverb our sound gets. So let's listen to it. Now watch what happens as I push this knob up and give us more reverb. So we get all of that sound. Now let's make this room way bigger that we're in, and it's going to get like pretty crazy. I must warn you, you're about to hear some crazy reverb. Ready for it? I don't think you're ready. Let's go. That's an airy sound if I've ever heard one. So let's go ahead and bring it down to something more reasonable. But just to give you more of a lesson on reverb, I just turned off the plugin with this on-off switch here. Pretty awesome, I'd say so myself. Let's put it something reasonable again. Now we have some nice reverb on that, but we still need some delay. So delay, it's going to cause that echo to happen. And let's just do something simple like the stereo delay. I'm not really familiar with the Logic delay plugins actually, because I went third party on delay plugins, but it can't be that hard to figure out. Let's go up to this preset list and do a nice half note swing and see what happens. So by default, delay plugins like to come a little heavily loaded, as you heard. It was a little much to kind of keep up with, so let's turn it down a little, down to 14-15%. I remember when I used Logic plugins, that was like a comfortable amount of delay for the Logic delay. Here, kind of echoing, kind of in the atmosphere. That's what you want when you go for a delay plugin. You want it to be very subtle, but you want it to be present. Let's go ahead and play everything. So now that I created this little loop thing here, I'm going to go ahead and run through and give you just a brief explanation of certain functions that I may not have touched strongly over the course of this tutorial, so you have a better idea of what's going on. So if you want to make everything bigger, or if you want to make everything lengthier and get your song longer, you would select everything and go towards the top of the region and make this little tool appear, or if you went toward the bottom of the region, you could only just stretch it, and you'd have to internally make everything longer. But for now, let's just do this. Or you could actually do this. Command R, Command R. That'll make everything bigger the same way, only this time you can go and edit the individual regions like that. This is the loop tool. Wherever you end this is where this marker is going to stop moving and go back to the beginning. This is the primary tool here. So without holding command, you get access to this tool at all times. As you can see, it's the cursor. If I make the pencil tool my primary tool, all I have to do is click in without holding command, and I will get that. But that's annoying when your pencil tool is the primary tool, because you forget, and next thing you know, you accidentally draw in 500 different regions. So to access the secondary tool, which is in my case the pencil tool, just hold command and then you click it in. Whoops, like that. This file cabinet button over here opens up your primary navigation of preset instruments in Logic. You have access to anything from pianos, drums, sampler sounds, acoustic sounds, orchestral sounds, pretty much anything. Try to get through this whole library in a day. I'll give you $1 million if you can do it, because you can't. There's a lot of stuff in there, a lot of stuff for you to familiarize yourself with. Go for it. You can even search sounds, which is pretty cool. So let's go ahead, close that up. This eye here brings up your mixer. Whichever mixer you're working on is controlled by whichever track you have selected. So if I want to do Snare Bro, Snare Bro's mixer track shows up here, its volume shows up here, and so on and so forth. If I want to work on the Yamaha Grand piano, I click it and bang, look at that. The mixer changes to the Yamaha Grand piano, as you can see there. And then if I want to do the Airy synth lead, I click that, and look at that. We got the mixer here, right here. Now what's this lonely little mixer doing that's always kind of there and I haven't talked about it? Well, that's the master fader. Watch this. If I press play, I could turn the volume of my song down to nothing. Now, a little key with the master fader, leave it on 0 and don't touch it. You generally wouldn't want to touch that, even when it comes to the mastering stage of your track. You still don't. You want to keep that at 0. If anything, you can move it down a little bit to give yourself a little bit of headroom. But you generally don't touch that fader. If you want to turn the volume of your track down, do it with this guy up here, because that is also the volume of the track, and it actually has nothing to do with this, I've discovered. If you want access to all the loops that Logic comes with, and again, you want to go through all these loops and then come back to me and tell me you've listened to every single one, I'll probably call you a liar, because there's a lot of loops here. There's a lot of stuff going on, and Logic makes it easy to navigate, and so on and so forth. If you have third-party, any kind of third-party samples that you want to get into Logic, you can access those by coming into the All Media here, and you can go to Media or All Files and navigate your files until you get to those special samples that you might have. Or if you're using Splice, you go ahead and open up your Splice and take your drums and just slide them into Logic that way, and now you have a nice audio automatically opened audio file, and you can add your third-party samples that way. So then we'll come back up here, and you have your go back to the beginning button there, and then you have your play button. And then if you have a microphone and you want to record your microphone, you would click record. Now, I've covered most of the functions from this point up until this point. Everything else that I didn't cover is just a step farther into things. If I were to go ahead and explain it, it would kind of take away from the beginner idea of this tutorial. So what I would say is take what I taught you, go ahead, make some magic. So if you were able to take any value from this tutorial, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. And you can subscribe to my channel.